Hello everyone, Bear here, and today we're taking a look at Warhammer 40,000 Battlesector. Now this is a turn-based strategy game pitting the Blood Angels against the Tyranid hordes. Throughout this game, you will gain access to different units of the Blood Angels roster, as well as the potential use of the Sisters of Battle later on in the campaign. But just before we start, let's take a look at a few features. We can go onto our media browser and view the various screenshots for the game. Seeing as this game was released at 11 o'clock last night, we have no screenshots yet, though no doubt this will become filled as time goes by. Of course, we also have our tutorial, which is separate from the campaign itself. I personally played through the tutorial as part of the demo that was released for the Steam Next Festival, and I would actually recommend having a quick go through it, as it can help fill in on how some of the more unique mechanics work, such as calling in support, using your momentum, and also give you some idea of actually how each unit works. As even if you have knowledge of the tabletop game, of course, not all those mechanics translate perfectly into a video game. But beginning as always with our options, coming over to sound, we are able to adjust our subtitles as well as our music, sound effects and voice, which is pretty standard across most games. Interestingly, we can invert our camera, and I imagine that this is because, as announced by Black Lab Games, Battlesector will be coming to consoles in the future. Once more, coming over to our graphics, we have the standard options of resolution and quality, this time set to 1080 at Ultra. As always, I'm currently using a GTX 1080. That should give you some gauge of what power you'll need to work this game. Moving on to our controls, very importantly, we can rebind our controls, as well as providing some limited changes to the UI within the game. Now, as standard, the game will have unit banners and detailed enemy information turned off, so do make sure to go in and turn these on should you wish them. And finally, for our miscellaneous, we have data privacy and language settings. Now, the game does come with a fair selection of different languages, as well as the potential to prevent the collecting of information regarding Warhammer 40,000 Battlesector's play. They do know that this is for improving the experience, but I leave it to you whether or not you wish to engage in this. Now, the game does come complete with single-player, skirmish, and multiplayer modes, allowing you to play as the Tyranids or the Blood Angels, going up against your friends or engaging in random battles online. Now, of course, we will cover this at the end, but as I often say, I am a campaign gamer, so let's take a look at our single-player campaign. Now, you do have a selection of 4 different difficulties with Initiate, Astartes, Lieutenant, and a Company Captain, each of these increasing in difficulty as you go via the tried and true method of your units taking more damage and your enemies having greater health. We're going to be looking at this on the recommended difficulty of Astartes, as this is the difficulty the game will automatically select for you. Now, we do get some of the backstory for the Age of Crimson Dawn, just helping those who aren't too familiar with the Warhammer 40,000 lore, in particular the return of the Primarch Robote Guilliman and the introduction of the Primaris Space Marines. These are altogether an improvement of the traditional Space Marines, and in particular for the Blood Angels, show less of the corruption of their chapter's gene seed, though much of this is explained throughout the game's many cutscenes. And with that said, let's launch into our mission and see exactly how the game plays. Now, the majority of cutscenes in this game will take the form of static images with fully voiced over narration. There are some animated cutscenes, though if you're expecting a highly animated story, you might be a little disappointed. But starting off our mission, we can see the different units available to us. We have aggressors, intercessors, our assault squads, and some named characters, in this case Sergeant Carleon, who finds themselves kitted out like an assault marine. Now, it is important to know that each unit will have its own style of play within the game, with a unique selection of abilities and different loadouts available to them. For example, the intercessors are armed with bolt guns, giving them plenty of versatility upon the battlefield, serving them best at close to mid-range, thanks to the accuracy penalties that are incurred by shooting across multiple tiles. Our aggressors, on the other hand, are armed with bolt storm gauntlets, allowing them to engage the enemy in mid to long range, particularly in regards to these frag storm grenade launchers, which do substantial damage to units from far away. Now, hovering our cursor over the skill icon, we get a breakdown of how the weapon works. We have a range of 4 to 5 tiles with an optimal range of 4. Now, this is important to know, as suboptimal use, of course, by definition, will be less effective. We have a breakdown of the base damage, giving us a range of damage it can do, something that will come up often, as this game will force you to consider each move for the minimum and maximum potential, meaning a little bit of luck is included in how you complete each mission. We also have information surrounding splash damage, hitting additional enemies, meaning this at an armor piercing rating of 1 isn't going to be particularly effective going up against heavily armored foes, as well as the base accuracy of the weapon, including a potential unit bonus should we be able to level them up, which we'll get back to later, and an accuracy fall-off, meaning as we're firing further and further, this unit will be less likely to hit them. And to finish it off, we have the action point cost, an AP cost of 1. Now if we come over to our assault squadron, we can see that we have 1 action point available to this unit. Now your action points are typically used when fighting or engaging with the environment, or even when using a skill. We can also notice if we move into the orange tiles, you can actually use your action points as a means of additional movement, with this unit having a natural movement of 4, therefore being able to get 5 if they use their action point to do so. There are a lot of little considerations in this game, having you weigh up the balance and deciding whether the trade-offs are worth it. You can also see the amount of armor the unit has, allowing them to defend effectively against fire, as well as the evasion. Now your evasion will lower the accuracy of enemy attacks, though as we can see, the value is only effective if the unit has moved since its last turn, meaning you will need to keep moving to maintain your evasion to have a better chance of not getting hit. This game is entirely about keeping your momentum, keeping moving, pressing your advance, and being aggressive in your playstyle, which is a genuinely refreshing tone for a turn-based strategy game. And I will note, just before we move on from our character screen, coming over to Sergeant Carleon, we can see here that we have 2 action points for this character, meaning that you will be able to perform multiple actions with certain units and characters, as well as being able to move an additional 2 spaces should you wish to with this unit. And the final part to note is the health and weaponry as shown on the character card. Sergeant Carleon is armed with a bolt pistol and a chainsword and sporting 200 health. That is 200 health for the individual entity. Switching over to our intercessors, we can see that they are armed with a bolt rifle and have 75 health per entity. Each entity has their own health, rather than having a total unit health, meaning in the case of dispersed and equally shared damage, you could end up with a unit with the same collective health pool as one that has lost an entire entity. It's once more a very interesting system, adding to the many considerations throughout the game. So going over our controls, WASD to move around the map, as well as shift to allow us to move a little faster. Using our mouse, we can of course move to the edges of the screen to have the camera move that way. And by clicking and holding our middle mouse button, we are able to change the angle of our camera, whereas by scrolling, we can zoom in and out. But coming over to the left, we can actually see a nice breakdown of the different units we have based on their category in the Warhammer tabletop codices. Our HQ choices include Sergeant Carleon and Brother Arturo, our aggressors standing as elite units, our assault squad in fast attack, and our intercessors as our standard troop choices, allowing you to quickly see what units you have, as well as when clicking on them to scroll between them, with our orange light showing that they are the currently selected unit. We should note, of course, you can also see the different action points available to them, meaning you can quickly discern which characters are ready and available to fight. But just before we start, let's take a look at a few features. You will be able to organize your forces, moving them into the different tiles you have for deployment, as well as going into each unit and changing their weaponry loadout should you have the points available. So without further ado, let us begin our mission by simply destroying all the Hormigons in the immediate area. Now starting off with our Sergeant, we can actually use our jump pack, allowing us to quickly maneuver to attack this Hormigorn unit, or potentially move over to assault another. By left clicking then right clicking, we can have them travel a very far distance and get into a position to fire into the back of these Hormigorns. And by left clicking on the Hormigorns themselves, we can bring up some further information on them. We know that they are bound by endless hunger, gaining 5 momentum for every melee kill and 1 momentum for every ranged kill. Our Hormigons are only armed with scything talons, meaning they are a melee-only unit. So we're going to take advantage of that by firing right upon them. And as we can see by firing, we have killed 1 entity, now being marked as dead, or 0 health points in the further information, while not actually damaging any of the others. Since we have 2 points, let's go ahead and fire again. Now it is interesting to note that our character has fired upon a single entity before then firing on the others, taking them out one by one. And of course, this has provided us with our momentum. So when the momentum reaches 100, this unit will surge. We'll get to surges later on, but it is good to note that thanks to the red first ability afforded to all Blood Angels, we'll be increasing our critical chance by increasing that momentum, meaning your unit will always be passively superior if you can maintain it. Now, as well as ranged combat, you can get upfront and personal, dealing heavy damage by getting our chainsword into play, knocking out 1 unit and rendering the others easy kills. Now, a really great mechanic this game brought in is the ability to fall back. By doing this, we can step away from the enemy while still firing. Now, the enemy will have the chance to attack us as we leave their zone of interaction, but we also get our counter. And this means that after firing, we can then move out of their way, keeping our aggressors away from their counter attack. Now, firing through cover is going to have a huge impact on your ability to hit the enemy, dropping our unit down to a hit chance of almost 40%. Now, a quick note before we continue on some of the controls available to you. As I've stated so far, you can left-click a unit, then right-click for them to move, as well as left-clicking on their various skills and right-clicking to implement them. So as we can notice beneath, we do have hotkeys for each of these abilities, which will no doubt be very useful for those who wish to play this on a controller. Now, since we still have movement points, it should be noted that you are able to change your facing, with your facing making a difference when the enemy attacks you, making sure you are prepared to face your foes lest you get hit in the back and take additional damage. Now, an important thing to notice in this move is that when our units armed with a pistol were charged, they were able to take a shot at the enemy, dealing damage before they got hit. However, our intercessors armed with only a bolt gun were unable to fire back upon the Hormagaunts when they were attacked. Keep in mind that different weapons have different abilities in terms of reaction shots, and for those that do not have reaction, you will be forced to use Overwatch. Now, Overwatch works a little bit different in this game. By selecting Overwatch, we are then presented with all tiles in range of their weaponry. We can then select the tiles themselves that we wish to have overwatched. Now, keeping in mind, the further away you go, the less effective your weapon will be. Though I should also notice that using Overwatch will take a small momentum penalty from the unit at the end of the turn, meaning although it will increase your chances of taking out foes before they can reach you, and even suppressing them, though at the bare minimum harming them, it will come at a cost. Now, having used our jump packs prior, we can see here that we do have a 2-turn cooldown, including the turn they are activated, before we can use it again. Now, most of your basic attacks won't come with this cooldown, though do factor it into your strategies to ensure you're not caught out. And also bear in mind the sheer speed of the Tyranids. Now, zooming in our battlefield, we have a great view of our Primaris characters going up against these Hormagaunts. I've got to say, the graphics and art style for this game are absolutely fantastic, really bringing to life these brand new Imperial models. Another good thing to note is as you move, there is an arc of view, with the area you are facing providing you a significantly better field of view than those behind you. And something that is incredibly helpful is the use of echoes to mark unseen enemies. Great thing to note from our first victory is the suspicion of Sergeant Carleon. Now, the introduction of the Primaris came with great suspicion from the Space Marines, and the story really touches upon this idea that this is the proving grounds of the Primaris for the Blood Angels at least, acting as an opportunity for them to show their worth and earn their name as true brothers of the chapter. Taking a look at our victory screen, we can see we have earned 2 tokens, something we'll come back to soon. Also, we have a nice breakdown of our units and their abilities. We can see here our intercessors had no melee attack and a 57% range accuracy, appearing here for some reason as our MVP. We also have a full breakdown of all the units under our command and an explanation of their effectiveness in battle. And of course, moving over to enemies dispatched, we can see that in this mission we have defeated 8 Hormagaunts, and in the bracket, how many we have defeated so far in our campaign. Once more, it's just a nice little touch, giving some flavor to your conquest and allowing players to revel in their abilities. Having completed our intro mission, we're then taken to the campaign map. It's from here that we can engage in army management and use our HQ tokens. These are the tokens that we gain from successfully completing our missions, allowing us to upgrade our HQ and gain access to more abilities and units as we do. Currently looking at Sergeant Carleon, we can improve various base stats for his character, as well as bring in new command abilities, as well as potentially getting to the point of actually changing the weaponry he wields. Now, as of right now, some of these are locked off to us, though of course these will eventually unlock as the game progresses. Now, I should know that these are the standalone cost and not a cumulative cost of upgrades to this character. We had 2 tokens, spending 1 to get tactical precision, but then it would cost an additional 2 tokens to get into the second set of upgrades, meaning you're going to spend around 15 points in order to get to one of these tier 5 upgrades. Now, I will note that you can reset these, but it would be worth taking your time to plan out what you wish to do with each character as you go, because once you hit confirm, the reset is locked out. Now, moving over to our army management, we can see that we're able to take 8 units in total, though we are given a points value for the army listed here. You will need to weigh up the amount of points available to you to decide how best to form your forces. Taking a look at our aggressors do have a nice breakdown of the different statistics available to them, but also an indication of their points. With each unit contributing towards your army's total points value, and additional weapons once unlocked will increase the cost of a unit when equipped, meaning that should we wish to then further change their weapons to perhaps provide them with melter guns or plasmas. In order to equip this, we will need to consider the additional points value added by doing so. A good thing to note here as well is that we can add units to fill out our fighting force and then send units into the reserve force when we need to make space for new units. So we're going to go ahead and get ourselves an additional aggressor and assault squadron, maxing us out at 8 and bringing our points value to 620. With the option to move some into reserve should the need arise. It's a good idea to check your army often, as new units will become available throughout the campaign, with everything from your standard intercessor through to librarian dreadnoughts coming available as you distinguish yourself and your brothers in the face of their foes. With our army arranged, we're then able to select our new mission. Currently we only have the option of the Venomous Corruption. And what's great to see here is you do get some information regarding what's happening, but more importantly you are told the rewards available and the maximum army size at your disposal. So reaching the battlefield, we can see straight away we are 20 points over the limit, meaning we are going to have to remove a unit from deployment. It is nice that they give you the option straight away, though it does mean we would have had more points available to us had we taken the time to compose our army properly. And the final point to note is that your sergeant costs 0 points, meaning you will always have them as a free character upon the battlefield. Starting off our mission, we've gained an additional character, Brother A Toro. And this is a sanguinary priest, allowing us to harvest gene seed and heal our units, with the harvesting of gene seed actually being one of our goals for this mission. Having a look through his skills, we can heal thy brother, gaining additional 35 HP for non-vehicle allies. We cannot resurrect the dead. This is really where the single entity health becomes important, as if you lose an entity, you will not be able to regain them by standard means. So keep good track of your units and exactly what's happening to them to ensure they stay fit and ready to fight in the name of the Emperor. Now, I will note, since it hasn't come up so far, that if you end your turn with units still having action points available, it does give the option to simply set them all to Overwatch. Now, I do love the fact that it points this out, and if we hit cancel, we can see straight away that our leader, Sergeant Carlian, is the one who has action points available. However, there's really no reason to use our Overwatch right now, as he will react to being charged, and with no enemies around him, it's unlikely we're going to catch any out. Meaning, if we did go into Overwatch, we would simply suffer the momentum penalty for no real gain. So as I said, it is a genuinely good thing to have, and I always love when games have these little hints that you'd missed something out or may have forgotten about something. But in this case, we are simply going to ignore it. Now, meeting some new enemies, we can see we have Venom Thropes. Now, Venom Thropes come with additional special abilities, such as this provision of a Spore Cloud, giving them an increased armor and evasion as they move around. Do make sure to have a check of the units you're going up against, so as to gain a better idea of how to take them out, but also to help set target priority when going against them. Now, do note that battlefield effects will take place, such as this Toxic Presence left by the Venom Thropes. By standing upon this tile, we will now receive additional damage from enemies thanks to this debuff, providing yet another consideration for players as you go about your game. I should note something very important about these zone of control rules the enemy has so kindly set off for us there. By having their unit run around the back and between our units, they in fact set off our aggressors and assault marines so as to engage them. This is why the fallback command is so useful, as even though you're still getting attacked, you are then able to attack the enemy as you do so. Now, I should know that when an enemy moves through your zone of control, or attempts to move through your Overwatch, they may well get suppressed, with suppression stopping the enemy in its place and preventing them from moving further. Following the completion of our prior mission, we now have a total of 700 points available to us, meaning our army at 620 actually could stand to gain an additional unit to it. Unfortunately, we do not have an additional unit on us and therefore cannot take advantage of this. Not to mention, there is a limit on the amount of units you can bring, meaning that even if you have enough points to bring additional units with you, they will remain locked. And this is really where upgrades come in, allowing you to improve your forces even if you cannot increase their numbers. So make sure to check missions before you enter them so as to avoid finding yourself in similar situations we are in now. Now if you don't end up playing through the tutorial, then you should know that there is a difference between a melee attack and a charge. Having a direct line of movement towards the enemy will allow you to charge into battle, causing additional damage to them and moving at a greater pace, getting into the melee faster and more effectively. Though you can still use your melee weapons in close quarters, it will not be as effective as pulling off a well-orchestrated charge attack. So progressing through the game, we finally hit a point where we can now empower or surge our unit. If we surge, we can gain an additional action point, although if we empower, then we can use an upgraded version of one of their abilities. Now since we have to hold our bunker for 3 turns, we're going to wait and see if we can use this more effectively in time. Now thankfully, as with many strategy games, the AI is not the greatest, and so when going on to normal difficulties, you're going to have a pretty fair chance of survival. This isn't to say that they won't put up a challenge, but the fact that things are a little more forgiving definitely comes in handy. And following the completion of our mission, we now have access to our Hellblasters, an army showing off some plasma incinerators, which is a great unit to have going up against those harder enemies, as well as unlocking a land speeder, a unit best sent for scouting. With high movement and a reasonably strong heavy bolter attached, they can travel around exploring the battlefield and defend themselves against those weaker foes. But something I would like to note just before we finish is our campaign history. You can take a look at the campaign history of each unit, showing off which battles they fought in, and enjoy the proof of your accomplishments throughout the game. So finishing there for our campaign, let's take a look at our skirmish. Now within the main lobby, you'll have access to 3 separate areas. Army management, where we'll change the composition of our units before each skirmish, the ability to replay campaign missions, and of course the ability to begin a skirmish match. Now the game does start you off with the 8th Company Strike Force and the Warrior Hunting Pack, both of which are 1,000 points worth of units. We can also create our own army selecting between Blood Angels and Tyranids, as we have done here. Of course this will come with no units inside, so you'll have to build it yourself. But taking a look at the Army Inspector for our 8th Company Strike Force, we can see the game has pre-chosen a Blood Angels Lieutenant, a Sanguinary Priest, 2 Death Company units, some Aggressors, a Furioso Dreadnought, Hellblasters, and some Intercessors to round off our units. Now I should note that you also begin with access to different abilities, as you can see, our 1,000 points is a fair amount to bring into a skirmish. We can also see the ability to change each unit's loadout. Now the Mastercrafted Bolt Pistol costing 0 points, however if we were to upgrade to our Inferno Pistol, it would cost us an additional 40 points. And these options are available to all units, meaning you can tailor your forces and spend your points as you wish. We can also see from coming over to our Add Units panel, the full roster available to us within our skirmish is broad enough to cover a wide selection of units. From our standard Intercessor troops, all the way through to Baal Predators and Tech Marines, we'll have a good selection to choose from when of course we include all of the different options in terms of weaponry that we can add to them. Of course this recording is shortly after release, and I would expect this unit roster to increase as time goes by. And moving on to our Warrior Hunting Pack for the Tyranids, we can see that we're given a Tyranid Prime, an Exocrine, a unit of Gargoyles, some Warriors, Termagants, and some Hormagaunts, with many of these once more having access to various different upgrades that you can apply to them. Taking a look at our roster though, we can see there are plenty of monstrous creatures involved, with Trigons and even the glorious Flyrant making its way in, that is to say a flying hive tyrant complete with wings. Now for those who know the tabletop, they will see this as somewhat of a sample given the sheer quantity of units available, both the Space Marines at large and the Tyranids with their many different mutations. But I honestly do feel the team's gone out of their way to pick some of the more iconic units and get them in right from the beginning, while still providing enough variation and potential to customize your units in whichever way you may wish. Now finally, clicking on Begin Skirmish, we have plenty of different options surrounding how we can implement our games, with multiple maps, changes to turn limits, changing point target sizes, as well as the possibility of having 3,000 points for your army size, meaning you can have some quick 500 point games or some rather elongated 3,000 point ones. So starting up a skirmish, we have plenty of options available and how you tailor your game. I think for today, we are going to play on a bridge just to make things a little easier to get into the combat straight away. Very useful to us as the Tyranids. You can set up different factors in the match. We are going for Exterminatus, that is literally just to wipe out all the enemy. Let's go ahead and begin. I do have to say, even though there's lots of variation right now, I'm a little disappointed to see the roster so limited, given how we're playing some of the more unique armies in the 41st millennia. Both armies are invested in engaging the enemy in close quarters combat, so it does definitely make for quite a fair way to play the game, seeing as neither has a particular advantage with either range or close quarters combat. Now coming over to our units here, we can see Hormagaunts and our Prime are some units whom this doesn't apply, but the balance is you have units such as your Exocrines with very large biocannons placed upon their back, meaning they're perfectly capable of taking on the enemy at range as well as close quarters, being monstrous creatures. Essentially, this is one of the more balanced ways I've seen a Warhammer game set up. Although that being said, it hasn't stopped the Blood Angels from annihilating our gargoyles post-haste. Now, something you should know when playing as the Tyranids, that certain units are synaptic leaders. Now, a synaptic leader will provide a 100% momentum gain to any units near them, meaning maintaining synapse is just as useful in this game as it is on the tabletop, allowing you to gain momentum and get damaging your foes far quicker. As we can see during this match, the enemy bringing assault squads with hand flamers is having some serious impact on our units, with entire squadrons being wiped out in a single hit. However, the units you're using are really made to just get into combat and deal with their enemies in melee, with your elite and HQ choices really being what you're reliant upon to defeat your foes. But as we can see on this right-hand bridge, all of our Hormagaunts and Termagaunts have been absolutely hammered, whereas between our Prime and our Warriors, we've almost taken out all of the assault squads that have come at us. Now, what is interesting to note is the fact that our units are actually unable to attack the Predator and Dreadnought, simply having all their damage blocked should we attempt to engage them, meaning you will have to think about what units you're bringing to task. They may not be up to it. And if you kill something while they attempt to fly away, it's kind of hilarious, so making sure you get to do that. And what's also good to know is when you're destroying vehicles, this will result in splash damage. So making sure your units are prepared to take that hit and hopefully survive the next round. Now really, the Skirmish is simply a training ground, allowing players to construct different armies and test them out before taking them into the online multiplayer. Now I will say at the current moment in time, just given the unit variety, the game is a little bare bones in Skirmish, though if you're willing to put the time in to actually customize your force and really create some balanced sides, it could be good fun and actually opens up to a fair few tournament ideas. So do give it a check. I wouldn't hold my breath for something that's going to give this game a real longevity. The armies you use in Skirmish do link over to your multiplayer account, meaning that you'll be able to build forces and test them out in Skirmish matches before taking them onto the multiplayer system, which if we have a look at, currently has some features locked out. Now, as it stands, you will be able to log into your Sliverine account, the potential to receive various updates, as well as the possibility of joining tournaments in the future. Now, Sliverine has announced their roadmap for this game, and it does include tournaments, though do note that this is not a requirement. Now I should note the army management screen does appear on the multiplayer section, allowing you to further customize your units before taking them into matches or even in between them. Now something I want to bring up because it's not open here yet, but when it comes to the online matches, we have live multiplayer where you can play against others doing each move in real time. However, the one I'm more interested in is asynchronous multiplayer. Now to read their description, this is fighting a battle against an opponent via a BPEM++ server. Players do not need to be online at the same time and turns are exchanged at each player's convenience. Now this is something that really has me interested in, as living in Japan, most of the people I know are not in time zones that sync up well with my own, and being able to play a game without having to match our schedules would just be a really convenient way to do it. Now the fact this is grayed out is a little bit annoying, but either way, the fact that it is there genuinely has me intrigued, so do keep an eye out for when this goes live. And finally, we do have hot seat multiplayer, fighting against an opponent on the same system. So that does show that we do not have cross-platform functionality. When this game does arrive onto consoles, you'll not be able to play against players unless you're using the same system. With all that said, I hope you've enjoyed the video and gotten a better idea of just what Warhammer 40,000 Battle Sector is. Who will you take the side of? Will you join the defense of Baal and take up arms with your Primaris brothers? Or will you follow the Horde and ensure the fleet consumes all to sate the Great Devourer? Either way, I can fully recommend this game to anyone who enjoys turn-based strategy games, and particularly anyone who enjoys Warhammer 40,000. Battlesector has some genuinely interesting and unique mechanics to it that does breathe some fresh life into the turn-based strategy genre, as well as keeping true to the many tenets of the genre that have helped define it over the years. But what do I know? I'm just a bear. Till next time, as always, peace out.